Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
We'll start.
Can you stop it for a minute? I just wanted to know where is the camera of this computer? Am I looking at you or looking somewhere else?
No, you're looking at us. Yeah, screen.
Okay. All right. Because that means the camera must be somewhere on that side. Okay. We'll begin then.
Yes, ma'am.
Om Atnanatimirandhasya Nananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam karoti vachalam Pangum langayate girim Yatkripatvamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Is this voice clear? Is the volume clear?
Yes, Mataji, clear.
Because I don't know where my settings are.
Yeah, it's very clear.
You can hear me very well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we should begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, Verse 17. Yascha mudhatamo loke, yascha buddhe param gada, tav ubhau sukham edhete, klishyat antarito jana. Yascha mudhatamo loke, yascha buddhe param gada, tav ubhau sukham edhete, klishyat antarito jana. Yascha mudhatamo loke, yascha buddhe param gatha, tav ubhau sukham edhete, klishyatyantarito jana. Both the lowest of the fools and he who is transcendental to all intelligence enjoy happiness, whereas persons between them suffer the material pangs. Both the lowest of the fools and he who is transcendental to all intelligence enjoy happiness, whereas persons between them suffer the material pangs. The lowest of the fools do not understand material miseries. They pass their lives merrily and do not inquire into the miseries of life. Such persons are almost on the level of animals who, although in the eyes of the superiors are always miserable in life, are unaware of material distresses. A hog's life is degraded in its standard of happiness, which entails living in a filthy place, engaging in sex enjoyment at every opportune moment, and laboring hard in a struggle of existence. But this is unknown to the hog. Similarly, human beings who are unaware of the miseries of material existence and are happy in sex life and hard labor are the lowest of fools. Yet, because they have no sense of miseries, they supposedly enjoy so-called happiness. The other class of men, those who are liberated and are situated in the transcendental position above intelligence, are really happy and are called Paramahamsas. But persons who are neither like hogs and dogs, nor on the level of Paramahamsas feel the material pangs. And for them, inquiry about the supreme truth is necessary. The Vedanta Sutra states, Athato Brahma Jitnasa. No one should inquire about Brahman. Sorry, now one should inquire about Brahman. This inquiry is necessary for those who are between the Paramahamsas and the fools who have forgotten the question of self-realization in the midst of life in sense gratification. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. There's a lot of food for thought here. Particularly, it is relating to our conception of what is happiness and our conception of our understanding about the nature of the jiva and the nature of its happiness, all these things. So in this verse, it is very clearly stated that there are two categories of people who are having happiness. One category is one who is foolish, like an animal, enjoying the sense pleasures of this world, completely unaware of any other type of happiness, or they don't even perceive that there is higher happiness than the happiness provided by the senses. So their intelligence is engaged all the time in enjoying material objects. And therefore, they are so immersed in that, they ignore suffering and they think they are happy. So this is the group of people who are deriving happiness from material or matter, let us put it that way, matter in general. And then in this verse, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that there is another category of persons who have already achieved the Supreme Lord. And the word used is Param, who is beyond Buddhe, matter. They are beyond matter. So this is totally a different kind of happiness. So in between, there is this intermediary category of people. They are suffering. They want to reject material world and they want to examine, why am I suffering? And anyone who wants to examine why am I suffering would want to know a solution for the problem also. So it's very clear that in this verse, as well as some other verses previously, I think it was from 12 to 14, the solution to the problem is very clearly pointed out, and that is bhakti process. And without coming to the platform of bhakti, there is no way of eliminating suffering. You can try to pretend to be overcoming suffering, but it is not happening really. So at this point, this conversation between Vidura and Maitreya, Vidura is already convinced the questions regarding the nature of the Lord, the nature of the living entity, the soul, all these questions are getting answered. Many verses prior to this, I'm sure a lot of devotees spoke on that. So at this point, Vidura is convinced that the soul has no actual suffering. So different analogies were discussed. In one of the analogies, it was said that in a dream state, when you see that your head is cut off, in reality, nothing is happening. Similarly, another example given was that of the reflection of the moon seen on the water. And when there are waves in the water, the reflection appears to be moving, but in reality, the reflection is not moving. It is because of the nature of the substratum on which the reflection is there. It appears to be moving. So in other words, because of the coverings that we have, or the antakarana was described earlier, because of the nature of these, because of our association with matter in the form of various type of coverings that we have, subtle body and the gross body, and the experiences associated with that, it appears to be experienced by the Atma, but in reality, the Atma is not affected by that. So all these questions from Vidura regarding the questions regarding the nature of the Lord and the nature of the Jiva and the topics on the Bhakti, Maitreya Muni is systematically, he's answering clear, he's giving very clear answers. And at this point, Vidura is quite cleared of all those doubts. And as I mentioned in the previous verses from 12 through 14, the solution to the problem is already given as the process of bhakti. So now we would think that if we know our problem, we have so many different problems associated with the mind and body. We have so many impressions on our in our mind, subconscious also, from many experiences that we have in this lifetime and in many previous lifetimes. But Krishna has reset our memories, but still we do have lingering impressions from samskaras we have from previous lifetime. So we would think that if we knew our problem, we would solve it. But the fact is, we don't. An example is, I came to know that devotees in London, one time they did a program, university preaching program, in which it was creative preaching. It was very well attended because it was a topic relating to past life regressions. Past life regressions means people will talk about they are having memories of the past life. So and then the discussion based upon that, how does that impact them in this lifetime? So there were a group of young devotees who were organizing these programs, and usually it was very well attended. And so the person conducting the program, there were many young people who will come forward and very vividly explain their memories that was from the previous life. Very, very clear description. So the person who was conducting the program, he used to connect those past life experiences with the present life situations. Maybe, for example, if somebody had a terrible car accident or something, and the trauma of that comes to this lifetime, and so maybe that person is so scared to drive the car. So then if you analyze this, and so you got an answer, oh, I had an accident in my past life, and that's why I'm not able to drive this car. But where does that take you? That one problem, you discussed it, and is it going to solve the problem of our material existence? So the experience of these devotees were that no matter how these problems were analyzed, by the end of the program, they noticed that the people went back to their normal way of life. They went back to their routine way of life, and nobody was particularly interested in really addressing the real problem of life, this material existence. They didn't show that type of an interest. And the people will go and do their normal drinking, dancing, or other activities. Similarly, I'm sure some of you at least have heard about this Dr. Ian Stevenson in University of Virginia, who did a lot of studies. He recorded cases of young children who had very strong memories from the previous life. He followed it up, and he did not see any correlation between this this memory, the memory of the previous life. No correlation he was able to see between that and a greater spiritual uptake. In other words, after studying so many young people's previous life experiences, following up to see how they are living their life in this lifetime, he didn't find any correlation between the previous life experience and the spiritual uptake in this lifetime. So Krishna kindly has reset our memories. And resetting of that memory is not really to our disadvantage. It really is not, because we cannot deal with our problems of life in bits and pieces. We have to look at consciousness as a whole. Not specific reasons for why I have a problem in this particular area. Instead of looking at, like, why am I like this? Or why do I have this deficiency? Why is my personality like with this little problem here? So analyzing these aspects of life is not good enough. You have to analyze, you have to understand the whole consciousness. In other words, purpose is to change our entire attitude. And that cannot come from bits and pieces of memories from previous lifetimes and connecting it with what is happening in this lifetime. So we have some work to do. That is, in this process of bhakti, each individual has some work to do. So there is one of these authors called, his name is Adam Grant. He had written that in from age 0 to 25, our wisdom is proportional to the education system through which we all grew up. Meaning, we all go to schools and colleges, and what that system teaches us, our wisdom grows based upon that during these early ages, 0 to 25 years. But after 25 years, from 25 to 75 years, this education is not, it is not our growth in wisdom. It is not proportional to any education that we are receiving. So growth in wisdom, it does not come from formal education from ages 25 to 75 or above. So, so therefore, we can understand that we are learning from our experiences. And that too, not just experience. Experience does not teach everyone everything. You may have so many life experiences, but unless you reflect upon the life experience, there will be no wisdom coming out of it. There is a saying in Malayalam, my language, that the person, I'm translating it into English, the person who fell down and did not learn anything from it is a fool. The person who fell down and did not learn anything from it is a fool. That is so true, because this whole experience of life is supposed to give us some wisdom. So even people who are less than 25 years of age, even they need to learn to reflect upon the experiences. What to speak about, the older we get in this life, the more reflections are necessary. And you can see millions of problems in communities like ours. Because even after we hear so many classes on spiritual topics, so many subject matters, there is no lack of lectures. There is no lack of intelligent people. There is no lack of scriptural study. There is no lack of communication. But there is a lack of growth. And that lack of growth, you can pinpoint that is because lack of reflection. And lack of wisdom that is coming out of lack of reflection. So that is why it is said, Shravanam, that means hearing, should be followed by Mananam, reflection. So without reflection, just hearing is not good enough. So we all wonder why there are problems in communities like ours. Why is it people are fighting with each other? There is a total lack of mananam. There is a lack of wisdom. You may be 70 years old or 80 years old. There is a lack of wisdom. And the lack of wisdom is seen in young people and also old people. And therefore, like this, the writer who is telling about, school education from 0 to 25, there is supposed to be a wisdom is supposed to grow proportionate to the education. But there also, we have to teach our children to reflect, and we have to teach our adults to reflect. If not, there will be no wisdom. There will be always quarrels. So, another example that you can relate to would be, you put food in your mouth and you don't chew on it, you won't get any nourishment. Food will go through the mouth and go out. Body will not receive any nourishment. So there is a necessity for an internal dialogue. So we all think about association, and we need to, association sometimes people misunderstand as holding hands or something, or being with somebody. Well and good, but there is a need for dialogue within ourselves. When you are by yourself, there is a need to ask questions and get it answered within yourself. So we were all taught that we should tolerate all the inconveniences. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkada. What is the meaning of the word tolerance? Tolerance is somehow you get through. Okay, somebody is shouting at me. Okay, I'll put up with this. I'll somehow get through this. That is tolerance. But there is also an acceptance that comes out of an experience. And that acceptance is actually growing through the pain. It's not just tolerating the pain. It is the growth that you have through the pain. And to grow through the pain, you need manana. And tolerance has a place. We will tolerate things. We are required to tolerate. But then we have to come to the state of acceptance and then a state of embracing. So in other words, convictions must lead to realizations. Convictions should lead to realization. And if it does not happen, there will be no growth. So now in this verse, there was this description. This is the last thing I'm going to say. There was this description about two type of happinesses. The happiness that is coming from everything that is material around us. And then there is another category of people who are described as those who derive happiness from spiritual realization, Paramahamsas. And in between, the category of people who suffers and who want to get answers to the problems of life. Now, in the scriptures, the Atma is described as Chid Anandatmaka. Chid Anand Atmaka, it literally means that the soul is of the nature of consciousness, happiness, and consciousness. That's the nature of the soul. So we have to be consciously aware of everything surrounding us to be happy. And soul is both conscious and happy by nature. That is the nature of the soul. So if you are not aware, if the Atma is not aware, it won't be even aware of happiness, but it is aware. So to be, meaning the Atma is of the nature of happiness, is quite different from just experiencing happiness. So that is another thing to understand. So we all know that there are different situations, we experience different kinds of happiness, and this happiness itself, various type of happiness, is described in the scriptures differently. So there are 4 or 5 different categories of happiness, and one type is the first one, which was described in this particular purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is Martyananda. It is material happiness, material pain or material happiness relating to this material body. And these are both external, whether it is relating to our physical body or relating to our mind. These are all external happinesses. And then there is something called Jivananda, that is the happiness experienced by the soul. And one category, one example of that is the happiness that one experiences in deep sleep. And in deep sleep, there is no influence of the external body or that of the subtle body. In other words, our gross senses are subdued, even subtle senses are not happening. And at that point, the body is not, or sorry, the Atma is not under the influence of any of these. And yet, after you wake up from a deep sleep, then you feel that I had a very deep sleep. You feel happy, and that happiness is coming from the Atma. Now, this is a lot of food for thought. And then there are happinesses described as Brahmananda, and then there are happiness of the category which is coming out of bhakti. And bhakti literature clearly points out happiness coming out of bhakti is so different from everything else, every other type of happiness. So now, of these various type of happinesses, like the one which is described in deep sleep, it is just like if you are carrying a heavy load on your shoulders and you temporarily put it down, then you feel a relief. It's similar to that. See, when you wake up from your sleep, you are back to where you were. And so that is not a permanent happiness. It's a very temporary happiness. And also we know all the happiness and distress coming in this, in our material experiences in this world also is all temporary, and it is very short-lived. So even though the jiva has got, its true nature is happiness, the happiness experienced by jiva in these conditions. Now, of course, jiva is not experiencing this external happiness. It's nothing at all compared to the happiness of bhakti. And for that matter, even the so-called happy nature of the jiva is also infinitesimal. The true happiness of the jiva is also infinitesimal. And it is a very deep subject matter described in detail in Jiva Goswami's writings, Paramatma Sandarbha. There are references in what is that? Brihad Bhagavatamrita commentaries, and there are detailed descriptions of Jiva's nature of the happiness and the degree of happiness. It varies, and it's a deep subject matter. But coming back to this particular verse and the purports that we have discussed, it is so important for us to understand the effect of these coverings on our true self. And like that explanation given regarding the reflection which is fluttering when the water is moving, reflection of the moon which is fluttering in the water, the surface on which the moon is reflected, it clearly explains our situation. We have so much disturbances caused by both our body and our subtle body. So much of disturbances are going on. And to separate ourselves from that and to be able to look at it properly, we need introspection. And if you don't have an internal dialogue, it will be very, very difficult to make progress in the bhakti process. That internal dialogue should take us in that direction. Otherwise, we will be 70-year-old, 80-year-old, 90-year-old. There will be no growth. And so with that thought, I will leave you with that thought. And if you have anything to contribute towards this discussion, you are most welcome.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much for a nice message. I mean, it is appropriate for us to ponder on it to get the wisdom that one gets, right? Not best by going through the experiences, one may not get it. One may get very little or even not, right? Because one will blame oneself or, right, whatever challenges one is going through. But if one ponders on it, why am I going through? And then one gets that real experience or the wisdom. So, it's, the other thing, Mataji, one other thing I was thinking, one doesn't need to go through the problems all the time, right? Even one doesn't need to go through some experiences to get that wisdom, right? Even one just by hearing from proper sources, if one is intelligent enough, is that the way also one can get some wisdom, Mataji? Or
My understanding is that hearing is recommended, but Shravanam, everything begins with Shravanam, but Mananam is needed. That is, without Mananam, what you heard through one ear will go through the other ear.
Yes.
And one may be constantly hearing. You can attach a loudspeaker to your ears, starting from the time you wake up until the time you go back to sleep. You can continuously hear. But if you don't have Mananam, that causes a lot of problems in life. And this is absolutely true. And what is the purpose of hearing? Purpose of hearing is Athato Brahma Jitnasa. That's what the Vedas are telling, right? We have to question what is the purpose of this. So when this whole chapter until now, I mean, I was reading all the verses leading up to this verse, and it's very clearly described. Now, Vidura is raising the question regarding the nature of the Atma and the nature of the Lord and Bhakti also. And Maitreya is clearly explaining what is what. But every word that Maitreya says, it is worthy of mananam. And just this simple analogies that is given there with regard to a person dreaming about the head being cut off in the dream state, or a person seeing the reflection of the moon in the water, which is vibrating, and thinking that the moon is vibrating. And now this analogy, we can just think about it very, very deeply, that all the experiences that we are having in this material world is not experienced by the Atma, but it is all relating to the matter, whether it is gross body or subtle body. And from that experience, whether you experience, your question was whether experience is necessary, or even without experience, just by hearing, can we progress, or can there be growth? We cannot avoid experiences in this world. My understanding is that experiences are always there, whether it is a physical level, mental level, emotional level. We have experiences of all sorts. As long as we have these coverings, we will go through experiences. And experiences is supposed to teach an intelligent person. Experience is not meant for just experience the pain and suffering and forget about it. If one wants spiritual growth, I mean, your question was whether experience is necessary to teach you. No, you can even, a person, you sit and read something and you can do mananam on the topic, just like what now this conversation between Maitreya Muni and Vidura. There is so much food for thought here. You can just read it when you are not experiencing anything good or bad in life, and you can meditate upon the discussions. Everything in Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for meditation. Same is true for Bhagavad Gita too. So experiences, we cannot avoid experiences, and we have to learn from experiences. And to learn anything, you need guide. You definitely need guide, because if you don't have guidance, and you are not willing to take guidance from someone, someone may reach to their own conclusions. Not that we shouldn't be thinking individual. We should be thinking. We should be consciously thinking about things. And yet, when in doubt, when we engage in activities which are detrimental to the progress in our devotional life, in a community, we need to consult with someone else who you trust, who you have faith in, and clarify your doubt before jumping into conclusions and screaming at each other. Because that's not why we are here in this business. And this is why the topic is so important, because it is pertaining to the nature of the jiva. What is the nature of the happiness experienced by the jiva? And how does it compare to happiness in bhakti? And to understand these topics, it requires a lot of mananam. It doesn't come by blindly passing through life. And when I see in communities which are like budding communities like ours, it's a point of concern, because it's in after millions of lifetimes, we get a human form of life. after millions of lifetimes, we take to the process of this bhakti process. And even in this philosophical journey, also, there are so many other paths everybody could have taken, but a handful of people have taken to the path of bhakti. But path of bhakti will not also produce tangible results unless one is thoughtful. It doesn't have to come from experiences, but life will give us plenty of experiences. There will be no lack of experiences. But also we have the opportunity of hearing from saintly devotees, and we will benefit to the maximum from hearing when we meditate upon it. That's why I think it was in that purport, it is said that ultimately that this convictions that we have, it should lead us to realizations. And ultimately, when this is not going to happen without meditation, we have to serve the Lord with conviction, but also with realizations. That is my understanding. You cannot go through this motion. Every single day we are going through this motion of the so-called devotional life. It doesn't allow us to grow. So anyway, to leave it in a
Thank you.
positive.
Thank you so much, Mataji. I think even when one is hearing, so one can continue to hear, as you said. So one has to ponder on topics, otherwise one will not get the wisdom message. One will only get the surface message. So I think
So
very
how do
nice.
you get how do you get to the realization also? It is said in the scriptures that comes by service to the Lord. Service is necessary. Sevon mukhehi jihwado, which is chanting as well as literally serving the Lord. But serving the Lord in what mentality is the question. So we are everybody in our community. Take for example, how much service is going on with so many devotees not serving. I mean, without their service, there is no managing of the temple. But what about these devotees' spiritual growth? Spiritual growth would depend upon mananam. And if we spend 10 minutes of our time doing that, majority of the problems can be addressed. We have to be thoughtful individuals, learning not only from scriptures, but from personal experiences as well, and the humility. This is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke so much about Trinadapi Sunichena, being humble. Humble oneself does not mean just externally making it appear like, yeah, I'm very humble. No, it means that willingness to be submissive to someone. Don't think that we all know everything. When I am in doubt, I immediately call someone who is superior to me or somebody who is guiding me. I immediately call and get my doubt clarified. Am I right in making this decision? I don't make the decisions on my own. I always cross-check to see, because my mind can anytime betray me. I can do something and then it could result in something else. So I'm not willing. I mean, it's like I really want to hear from my authorities, what should I do? And that should be the mentality of every single person in our community, so that they can feel that, okay, I have someone who I can go to and discuss when my mind is taking me for a ride. I can take the guidance. And that willingness to be humble to take it, or having the faith and trust in someone, that itself is a big thing. And most of the time our problems come because we don't take that position. And instead, I mean, I notice something like people of some similar mentality consult among themselves and reach to conclusions. And those kind of things are not healthy in a community. In a community, we need to humble ourselves, take guidance from someone you trust, or someone with whom you have that type of a relationship. Not like you want association from those who are able to guide you. You don't want to consult with someone who will pull you down, because there is a higher purpose why we are here, especially being here in this moment, in this bhakti process. If we are not thoughtful individuals, if we don't do this manana, if we don't seek guidance from someone who is having a thoughtful nature, we will fail. And the loss, who loses? Every individual loses, the community loses, institution loses. So this is the fact. And therefore, it is so important, even if we spend hours and hours on this topic, it is worth it, because it helps the individuals to grow. And that's why we are here in this institution. We are not here going through just the motion, external motion of pretending to be devotees of Krishna. So, unless anyone else have something to contribute, I think we can stop. Okay. Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.